The Burning of Separation, The Life of Molawi Kurd, based on the book by Dr. Jamal Ahmadi, narrated by Farzad Rashidi. Some poets are remembered because they wrote beautiful lines. Others are remembered because their lives became a kind of poem. Molawi Kurd belongs to that second group. His life was not merely the life of a poet. It was the journey of a child born into poverty, shaped by learning, wounded by separation, refined by love, and finally transformed into one of the great mystical voices of Kurdish literature. In The Burning of Separation, Dr. Jamal Ahmadi reconstructs the life and world of Molawi Kurd with the care of a researcher and the sensitivity of a storyteller. The book does not present Molawi as a distant name in literary history. It brings him close. It allows us to see the mountains, schools, mosques, friendships, griefs, and spiritual struggles that formed his voice. This is why the book matters beyond Kurdistan. It introduces a man whose poetry grew from the deep soil of Kurdish culture, but whose human experience is universal. The hunger for knowledge, the pain of loss, the search for love, and the longing for God. A poet born from a difficult world. To understand Molawi, we first have to understand the world that produced him. 19th-century Kurdistan was not a peaceful place. It stood between great powers and local rivalries. The Kurdish emirates of Baban and Ardalan lived under pressure from the Ottoman Empire and Qajar Iran. Rulers rose and fell, alliances changed, power often brought betrayal, and ordinary people lived under the shadow of instability. Yet this same troubled world was also rich in learning. Sulaymania and Sanandaj became centers of poetry, religion, scholarship, and Sufi life. The outside world was full of political uncertainty, but the inner world of culture was alive. In that tension between hardship and beauty, Molawi's life began to take shape. He was born Abdul Rahim, the son of Mullah Sa'id, into a family where material comfort was limited, but spiritual inheritance was strong. His home was not wealthy, the land was hard, life was simple, but inside that simplicity there was Quran, religious teaching, Persian classics, Sufi memory, and respect for saints and scholars. Molawi did not appear suddenly as an isolated genius. He came from a family tradition that valued knowledge, piety, poetry, and inward refinement. Before he became a voice of longing, he was first a child listening to sacred words in a poor but spiritually rich home. The child who left home to learn. Like many serious students of his time, young Abdul Rahim had to leave home early in search of knowledge. His journey took him through the religious schools and cultural centers of Kurdistan: Halabja, Chur, Sanandaj, Baneh, Suleymania, Kharpani, Javanrud, and other places of learning. These were not comfortable journeys. A student did not simply sit in a classroom and read books. He lived with little food, little money, and little certainty. He cleaned, served, collected support, studied long hours, and learned patience. Traditional education was not only intellectual training, it was moral training. It shaped the body, the habits, the memory, and the soul. In Halabja, Abdul Rahim first tasted the pain of separation from family. In Chur, he felt the presence of ancestral memory. In Sanandaj, at the famous Dara al-Ihsan school, he entered a larger world of scholarship and culture. The young student, still tender in age, stood before great buildings, important teachers, and serious books, and slowly began to understand the path before him. Each place gave him something. Halabja gave him endurance. Chur gave him roots. Sanandaj gave him breadth. Baneh gave him friendship and the language of farewell. Sulaymania gave him contact with powerful scholarly and spiritual circles. Javanrud refined his literary taste and revealed his wit. By moving from place to place, Abdul Rahim was not only collecting knowledge, he was becoming a person capable of feeling deeply, observing carefully, and turning experience into language. Knowledge, friendship, and the birth of poetry. One of the most beautiful things about Malawi's formation is that learning and emotion grew together in him. He studied religious sciences, rhetoric, jurisprudence, theology, Arabic, Persian, and poetry. But alongside formal study, he also learned the grammar of the heart. Friendship became one of his early schools. His connection with figures such as Sheikh Aziz Janwari appears through poetic letters and farewell poems. Distance from friends sharpened his emotional voice. Leaving places and people taught him that separation can become art. This is one of the secrets of Malawi's later poetry. His words do not feel invented, they feel lived. Before he wrote of longing, he had known distance. Before he wrote of grief, he had carried loss. Before he wrote of spiritual fire, life had already placed fire inside him. The book also shows his human side. Molawi was serious, but he was not dry. He was learned, but not lifeless. A small story from Pawe shows his humor and intelligence. When a host claimed he had intended to slaughter a lamb after Malawi's departure, Molawi replied with wit, asking to return so the promise could be fulfilled. Such moments rescue him from becoming a statue. They give us a living man, sharp, social, playful, and deeply present. The wounds that deepen the voice. No life of spiritual depth is made only of books. Molawi's life was also shaped by wounds. The death of his father, Mullah Said, forced him to return home and carry family responsibilities. The young seeker of knowledge became the eldest son responsible for his mother, siblings, and household needs. His education was interrupted by grief and duty, but his thirst for learning did not disappear. He returned again to study, more mature and more aware of life's weight. Later, he reached the rank of recognized scholar. He studied with major teachers and received permission to give religious rulings. This meant that he was no longer only a student wandering between schools. He had become a man of learning, trusted in matters of religion. But knowledge did not silence his hunger. Molawi had mastered the sciences of his time, yet something in him still searched for more. Outward knowledge was not enough. He wanted inward certainty. He wanted a truth that could be lived, not only understood. Love also entered his life as a wound and as a door. The book speaks of a possible early pure love connected with Rabia, a love that did not end in marriage but may have left a deep trace in his heart. Later, Anbar Khatun became one of the most important emotional figures in his life. She is presented as beautiful, dignified, and deeply meaningful to him, a source of peace, tenderness, and poetic inspiration. Yet love, for Molawi, was never only earthly. Human beauty became a mirror. Personal longing became a path. The beloved was not merely an object of desire. She became a sign, a doorway, a reminder of a greater beloved. Then came losses that cut even deeper. The death of his first child, the death of loved ones, and later the loss of Anbar Khatun herself. These griefs did not destroy his poetry. They intensified it. They gave his voice the sound of a soul that had been burned and had learned to speak through the flame. From scholar to mystic. Malawi's journey did not stop at scholarship. The book places him inside the great Sufi networks of his time, especially the Naqshbandi tradition. The influence of Maulana Khalid Sharazuri and the guidance of Sheikh Uthman Siraj al-Din became central to his spiritual development. Through Sheikh Uthman, Molawi found more than a teacher. He found a guide. Their relationship was built on devotion, respect, letters, poetry, and inner transformation. Malawi's identity widened. He was no longer only a scholar-poet. He became a seeker of direct spiritual experience. This is one of the most important movements in the book, the movement from knowledge to presence. Molawi had learned from books, teachers, and debate. Now he was learning from discipline, silence, worship, and longing. His spirituality was not decorative language. It was a lived practice. He chose simplicity, night prayers, self-discipline, and service. He experienced poverty and hardship, but he did not treat them only as misfortune. They became part of his path. The chapter on his nightly laments is among the most powerful parts of his portrait. Night becomes the place where Molawi's inner self appears most clearly. In the darkness, he prays, cries, repents, hopes, fears, and longs. His tears are not weakness. They are the sound of separation. They are the voice of a soul searching for the beloved. A voice in society. Malawi was not only a private mystic, he lived in history, and he responded to the wounds of his society. The book discusses religious tensions in Sanandaj, including the crisis around the Sheikhi movement and the Caravanserai incident. These events show a world where belief, power, identity, and public order were deeply connected. Religious disagreement could quickly become social conflicts. Scholars, rulers, ordinary people, and spiritual leaders were all drawn into the pressure. Malawi's letters reveal that he was concerned with fanaticism, misunderstanding, and the misuse of religion. He was not merely a poet of love and sorrow, he was also an ethical voice. He cared about the moral health of the community. He believed that knowledge should create wisdom, not division, humility, not arrogance. This makes him especially important for modern audiences. Molawi was a mystic, but not one who escaped from responsibility. He was a spiritual man who understood society, power, and the dangers of blind certainty. The theologian poet. Many people may first meet Malawi as a poet of longing, but Dr. Jamal Ahmadi's book reminds us that he was also a serious theologian. He wrote in Kurdish, Arabic, and Persian. He turned complex religious ideas into poetic form. He joined doctrine with beauty, thought with music, and belief with language. This is one of the reasons Molawi deserves to be introduced to a wider world. He was not only a man of emotion, he was a man of intellect. He was not only a singer of sorrow, he was also a thinker of faith. His ability to write theology poetically shows the strength of Kurdish literary culture in his time. It shows that Kurdish was not only a language of daily life or local expression, it could carry spiritual philosophy, theological reflection, and artistic beauty. In this sense, Molawi Kurd stands as a bridge between scholarship and poetry, between Kurdish culture and Islamic thought, between personal grief and universal longing. The human being behind the poet. One of the strengths of the book is that it does not turn Molawi into a distant saint without human texture. It shows him among friends, witty, affectionate, socially intelligent, and full of stories. He could bring life to gatherings. He could speak with scholars, students, rulers, tribal leaders, and ordinary people. His relationship with powerful Kurdish figures, including leaders of the Jaf community, shows his social range. He was respected by people of influence, but he did not become a flatterer of power. He kept dignity and independence. His authority came not from wealth or position, but from knowledge, character, and spiritual presence. This balance is important. Molawi was not only a man of the mosque, and not only a man of the manuscript. He was a complete human being, serious and humorous, wounded and strong, humble and brilliant, inwardly burning yet socially alive. Old age and the final flight. As Molawi grows older, the tone of the story becomes more sorrowful. The deaths of loved ones, the passing of friends, and the decline of the body darkened the landscape of his life. The world that had once been filled with study, travel, friendship, and love becomes increasingly filled with memory and lament. The death of Anbar Khatun wounds him deeply. His later years carry the sound of elegy, but old age does not empty him. It intensifies him. The body weakens, but the voice becomes deeper. The world takes more away from him, but the soul speaks with greater fire. Finally, the book reaches his death, presented not simply as an ending, but as a flight toward the divine kingdom. After poverty, learning, travel, love, fatherhood, loss, teaching, humor, worship, social concern, theology, and mystical longing, Molawi leaves the world, but he does not disappear. His voice remains, his poetry remains, his burning remains. Closing reflection. In the end, The Burning of Separation is more than a biography. It is the story of how a human being becomes a poet. It shows that Malawi's poetry did not come from imagination alone. It came from life itself, from the poor village, the religious school, the road between towns, the death of a father, the ache of love, the loss of a child, the guidance of a spiritual master, the responsibility of a scholar, and the tears of a mystic in the night. Molawi Kurd was a scholar, poet, theologian, teacher, husband, father, friend, and wounded soul. But above all, he was a voice of longing. And perhaps that is why he still matters. Because every human being, in one way or another, knows separation. Separation from home, separation from childhood, separation from loved ones, separation from certainty, separation from the self we once were, and in the deepest sense, separation from the beloved. Molawi turned that pain into poetry. He turned loss into remembrance. He turned the burning of separation into a path towards God. Dr. Jamal Ahmadi's book gives us more than the life of a Kurdish poet. It gives the world an invitation to listen to a voice shaped by Kurdistan, but speaking to the human soul everywhere.